During the hectic months between Abraham Lincoln's 1860 election as president and his inauguration, a group of Southern pro-secession political operatives, informally known as the Coral Reefers, held a number of meetings in Washington, D.C. When their efforts to influence the remaining congressmen, senators, and cabinet officers from as-yet unseceded Southern states came up short, they decided a more drastic move was in order. Historian William C. Davis writes that the Coral Reefers wanted to devise some dramatic and radical act that would precipitate a crisis at once, taking advantage of the excitement of the moment for the completion of the disruption at the very outset and carrying its immediate consummation by coup d'etat after coup d'etat, as Stuart confessed. One member proposed a plan to kidnap Abraham Lincoln when he passed through Baltimore on the way to Washington in his inauguration. With the approval of the several clubs, a delegation went to Baltimore to offer the plan to sympathizers there, while at the same time another faction of reefers came up with a plan to abduct Lincoln and his cabinet in Washington itself before the inauguration, and to kidnap with them as many Republican members of Congress as possible. The captives were to be taken south to a hideaway in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. That would create a vacuum in Washington that the South could somehow capitalize upon, or so they thought. The Reefers had their scheme complete just as Jefferson Davis was about to leave to return to Mississippi, having resigned his seat in the Senate. Though circumspect about their plans, especially with moderates, the Reefers decided to take Davis into their confidence. After all, he was the leading statesman in the slave states and one of a very few men likely to be considered for chief executive if a new Confederacy was formed. The Reefers hoped that he would lend advice to further their project. At a secret meeting, they laid it all before him, but Davis balked. He immediately condemned the plot for what it was, a silly and impractical pipe dream that would make a mockery of their stand for independence on high constitutional principles. Moreover, it was wicked. Besides, as they should have known themselves, he pointed out to the conspirators that Virginia had not yet seceded and was itself deeply divided, with a strong contingent very loyal to the Union. The idea of being able to keep Lincoln and the others securely in the Blue Ridge was ridiculous. He was very resolute in his dissuasion, said Stuart, and staggered their confidence. Davis's condemnation doomed the plot, though the Reefers thought they would only postpone their plan to a later date. A few years later, Stuart was convinced that Davis himself had caused a warning to be sent to Union authorities, alerting them to the plot. Certainly, in February 1861, when Lincoln traveled to Washington, he was apprised of a kidnapping plot in Baltimore and managed to slip past the conspirators, some of whom were later arrested, though whether Davis himself was the cause of their undoing is uncertain. In foiling the kidnapping plot, Jefferson Davis exercised his first veto even before the Confederacy had formed and elected him president. Within a few years, at least one Confederate would think about kidnapping him. William C. Davis writes, "There is no doubt that frustration with Davis could drive some men to extreme thoughts, though it usually revealed more about the character of his opponent. Those with disappointed ambitions were always the worst, the most intemperate and the most blind to their own selfish motivations. John T. Pickett was appointed a diplomatic agent to Mexico in 1861, but thoroughly bungled the job and embarrassed himself, resulting in Davis rebuffing his later efforts to gain a brigadier's commission. Instead, the highest status he would achieve was as lieutenant in a company of congressmen and clerks raised in Richmond in 1864 for emergency defense. So angry was he over his thwarted ambitions that one day when Davis rode past Pickett's company in the defenses, Pickett considered kidnapping the president and spiriting him across the lines to the Union. Nothing had been easier than that capture, he would claim, and it would have saved our cause." You can help save this little channel's cause of providing nuanced dispatches on the Antebellum era by subscribing, commenting with your thoughts, sharing with anyone who might be interested, and watching another video or two of mine if you have time. Leave a like on your way out, and I'll see you in the next episode.